那么台湾的媒体与各位合作伙伴，大家好，大家早安。我是负责台湾、香港、韩国业务的 Jenny。那么我们今天呢，很荣幸的能够为大家介绍 Parallels Desktop 17 for Mac。这个强大的解决方案呢，可以让使用者在 Apple M1 还有 Intel 晶片上的 Mac 电脑上执行 Windows 应用程式。今年的 Parallels Desktop 17 for Mac 是个通用2进位的应用程式。那么这个版本呢，是针对大家所期待的 Windows 11还有 Mac OS Monterey 作业系统呢进行优化。这个版本呢，提升了 Windows 的游戏体验，使用者呢可以体验到卓越的速度，还有图形改良的功能，以及更优化的资源管理与查看功能。那么正如呢，您今天将会在展示中所看到的 Parallels Desktop 17 for Mac 的这个产品呢，可以让用户在 Mac 上呢以更快速、更流畅的方式执行 Windows 应用程式。那么价格方面呢，今年的版本的价格是维持不变，而2021年的技术保障期间呢，也跟往年一样呢所以只要是在8月1号到9月30期间所购买的 Parallels Desktop 16的客户，都可以免费升级到 Parallels Desktop 17。今天呢，我们很高兴有 Parallels 高级产品经理 Kurt Schmacher 为大家展示强大的 Parallels Desktop 17 for Mac。那么请大家好好欣赏。Kurt, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Let me start my slides and share my screen.
刚刚谢谢 Jenny 的介绍，那我来分享一下我待会要使用的简报投影片。
I'm very happy to be here today to tell you about the latest release of Parallels Desktop version 17. I'm only sorry that I'm not able to be there in person.
那很高兴今天可以来跟大家介绍一下最新我们这个出版的 Parallels Desktop 17。那但是很遗憾就没有办法到现场跟大家一起。
My plan today is to talk for about 40 to 45 minutes. I have some slides to show you, and I have a live demo plan. We've also have enough room in the schedule for Q&A at the end.
我今天的计划呢是跟大家做一个40到45分钟的报告，然后会有一个 demo， 最后呢也会留下 Q&A 的时间。
So with that, let's begin. So Parallels has many products. Some are consumer products, some are business products, but as the flagship product, Parallels Desktop is in both camps, and I will show both consumer-oriented features and business-oriented features and talk about them today.
好，那接下来我首先说Parallels 其实有非常多的产品，比如说有消费端这边的产品，也有企业端这边的产品的。那中间就是我们的旗舰产品 Parallels Desktop， 这也是我今天要跟大家介绍的。
I picked 6 features of the many features of Parallels Desktop 17 to focus on today. I will talk about our performance on both the M1 and on Intel. I'll talk about macOS Monterey and Windows 11. I will talk about several specific features, including drag and drop, a new display driver for Windows, and an improvement to coherence, which is a fundamental technology in Parallels Desktop.
那我今天就选择了 Parallels Desktop 17里面的6个主要的功能来跟大家介绍一下。我也会提到说，在 M1 上，在 Intel 上面的应用，以及配合这个 Monterey 跟 Windows 11的使用。然后还有一些其他的功能，像是这种拖拉、拖曳式的这个功能，或者是我们这个图形驱动的改善，以及 coherence 的功能的改善等等，也都会介绍。
As a virtualization product, we of course know that Parallels Desktop exists between products from Microsoft and Apple. And we were fully prepared to support Windows 10 and macOS Monterey in Parallels Desktop 17.
我们的产品呢，它是一个虚拟产品嘛，那所以Parallels Desktop 它就作为微软以及 Apple 之间非常好的一个桥梁。那目前呢 ，Parallels Desktop 17呢可以支援 Windows 10，还有Apple Monterey。
But we were a little surprised, as everyone else was, by Microsoft announcing Windows 11 in June. So I can tell you today that Parallels Desktop 17 will fully support Windows 11 as a guest operating system, and I will show you this in my demo.
那微软在6月宣布有 Windows 11的时候呢，我们跟大家一样都有一些惊讶，但是在这边也可以跟大家讲，到时候这个 Microsoft 的 Windows 11呢正式的发布之后呢 ，Parallels Desktop 17也可以全面的支援。
Of course, we cannot fully support an operating system until it's finally released by Microsoft. But in the meantime, now you can run Windows 11 both on an Intel Mac and an M1 Mac using Parallels Desktop 17, and I'll show this in my demo.
当然了，在那个作业系统呢正式发出之前，我们没有办法确定说是不是可以完整的支援。但是目前的话呢，针对这个Windows 11呢，不管是你使用这个 Intel 的 Mac 或者是 M1 的 Mac 呢 ，Parallels Desktop 17都可以支援的。
To get Windows 11 for Parallels Desktop today, you have to join the Windows Insider Preview program, but that's free and anyone can join.
那为了要在这个 Mac 上面呢使用 Windows 11，那就必须要加入 Windows 11的 Insider Preview 这样子的 program， 但这是一个免费的 program， 大家都可以加入的。
Parallels Desktop 17 is a universal binary, which means it's fully optimized to run on either Intel-based Macs or M1-based Macs. This makes things easier for a consumer, but it especially makes things easier for an IT manager who has to deploy Parallels Desktop to dozens or even hundreds of Macs in their enterprise.
那 Parallels Desktop 17呢，它使用的是通用的2进位，那意思就是说呢，它可以用于 Intel 的 Mac， 也可以用于这个 M1 的 Mac。对于消费者来说，这样子的做法当然就使得使用产品变得轻松多了。但是对于 IT 经理来说呢，更加的容易，因为这些 IT 经理呢，常常必须要把这样子的 Windows 的这个作业系统呢，可能一部署就要部署到数百台 Mac 上面，所以使用这种方法，对于经理来说，对于 IT 人员来说比较容易。
It has been our plan to have the Intel-based Parallels Desktop 17 and the M1-based Parallels Desktop 17 have complete feature parity, but this turned out not to be possible.
当然最理想的话呢，就是 Parallels Desktop 它不管是用在 Intel 的这个 Mac 上面，或者是 M1 的这个 Mac 上面的功能，就是完全一模一样。只是很遗憾，目前还没有办法做到100%的一样。
This isn't possible even for Apple, because there are some features in macOS Monterey that are only on Intel, some that are only on M1.
那其实对于 Apple 来说呢，这一点目前也是不太可能做到，因为像是有些功能呢，可能是在这个 Monterey 上面要去运行的话呢，只有在这个 M1 上面有所支援，那其他的话呢是在这个 Intel 的 Mac 上面有支援，所以对于 Apple 来说呢，它们本身就有一些支援上的不同了。
No place is the difference between the two versions more starkly seen than in the type of guest OSs they can run. Parallels Desktop for Intel has been around for many years, and we run Windows 11 all the way back to Windows XP and other versions of Windows. On the Mac OS, we run in guest OS Monterey back to Lion, and there are a large number of Linux distributions that also work.
那这边我们可以看到说，如果是以这个 guest， 就是以客体的这个 OS 来讲的话呢，在 Intel 以及在 M1 上面的不同之处，在 Intel 这一块呢，左手边我们可以看到 Parallels Desktops 支援非常多的这个作业系统，比如说有 Windows 11啦，到XP 啦，然后 Mac OS 的这边的话呢，像是有 Monterey 到 Lion 都可以支援。
But on the M1, any guest OS must be an ARM-based OS, and that's a very much smaller number. Of course, Windows 10 and Windows 11, Mac OS Monterey, and there are 4 Linux distributions that we support in Parallels Desktop 17.
好，那但是在右手边我们可以看到，如果是在 M1 架构下面的话呢，这个如果是作为这个 Gas OS 的话呢，它必须要是一个以 ARM 为架构的 OS， 所以数目就会比较小一点。所以我们可以看到 Windows 的10、11，然后 Mac OS 的 Monterey， 还有 Linux 的几个版本。
But the situation is not as dire as this list of OSs seems to indicate. The vast majority of our customers will be running Windows 11 and Windows 10 either on Intel or on M1.
因此，现在如果有客户去买了 M1 的 Mac 的话呢，我们也都会建议说，如果原本就有一台 Intel 的 Mac 的话呢，那也先留着。这样子的话呢，比较旧的 OS 会比较旧的应用程式呢，都还可以用 Intel 的 Mac 来做运作。所以这一段过渡期间呢，可能这些客户身上就会有2台 Mac。
So both Windows 10 and Windows 11 are available from Microsoft, either for the Intel-based Mac or for the M1-based Mac, although you do have to join the Insider Preview program that I mentioned earlier, but they're both available.
不管是 Windows 10或11呢，都可以在 Intel 或者是 M1 的 Mac 上面来运作。不过也正如刚刚所提必须要先加入一个这个 Windows 11的 Insider Program， 但是这个是大家都可以加入。
And if you need to run a Linux virtual machine in a guest in Parallels Desktop 17, there are 4 distributions that we support. Getting one of these is basically a single button click inside Parallels Desktop 17.
如果您用的是 Linux 的话呢 ，Parallels Desktop 17呢也可以支援4种版本的 Linux， 正如大家所看到的这一些，只要呢按一个按键，立刻就可以使用了。
But OSs are probably not the most important thing to end users. To end users, the most important thing are applications. And here, I need to ask for your help because there are rumors and misinformation out there that on an M1 running Windows on ARM, you can only run an ARM OS, ARM application, and that's not the case.
对于这个终端的使用者来说，或许作业系统不是他们最感兴趣的，他们更有兴趣的呢是想知道说有哪些应用程式可以运行。所以这个地方呢，我就要请大家来帮我一个忙了，因为呢，这外面有一些谣传，就是说，如果是用 M1 的话呢，然后你是用这个ARM 的这个架构的话呢，那你在上面呢也就只能使用 ARM 的应用程式，但这并不是正确的说法。
In Windows 10 and Windows 11 for ARM, Microsoft has added an emulator to be able to run Intel-based applications, both 32-bit applications and 64-bit applications.
在这个 Windows 10还有这个11上面呢，如果是 ARM 的架构的话呢，那我们也有配合的搭载一个 emulator， 所以意思就是说呢，可以去跑可以在这个 Intel 上可以去跑这个 Intel 的32位元或者是64位元的应用程式都可以。
As you would probably expect, of course, the Office applications all run in this emulator, and as well as Microsoft's browser, Edge.
所以大家也就可以预期了，我们最常用的一些应用程式，像是 Microsoft 的 Office 或者是这个浏览器 Edge 呢，都可以正常运作。
But many other applications also work. Here you see a picture of Visual Studio running, another Microsoft app, but also apps from third parties, like CorelDRAW 2021, which is a 64-bit app and runs just fine in Windows on ARM, and I'll show you this in my demo.
那还有一些其他的应用程式也是如此，像是 Visual Studio 或者是其他的第三方的软体，或者是像我们这边看到的 CorelDRAW，也是。那 CorelDRAW 它是一个64位元的这个应用程式呢，它在这个ARM 架构的 Windows 上面呢也可以运行的。这个在稍后的 demo 也会给大家看一看。
In addition, resource-intensive applications like CAD/CAM applications like AutoCAD, or high-end games like Rocket League I'm showing here, all run on Windows on ARM inside Parallels Desktop 17 on the M1 MacBook, on the M1 Mac.
还有一些其他就是使用资源比较密集的应用程式， 也是如此，像是一些 CAD/CAM 的软体啦，像这边可以看到了有 AutoCAD， 或者是有右边这一种游戏啦 Rocket League 等等，这些呢在Parallels Desktop 17下面呢，如果是使用这个 M1 Mac 的话呢，里面如果搭载了这个 Windows 的话呢，都还是可以跑的。
The demo I'll show you in a few minutes is all on an M1 MacBook Pro, and I chose this specifically so you could see all these apps running and the performance.
稍后的 demo 给大家看到的，我会用一台这个 M1 Pro 来做 demo， 然后各位就可以看到呢，很多的应用程式都运作得非常良好。
But this leads me to the number one question I always get when there's a new release of Parallels Desktop, and that is, what's the performance? We were able to get performance improvements in a number of areas in Parallels Desktop 17. Some are on Intel, some are on M1, some are on both, but there's a wide range of performance improvements in Parallels Desktop 17.
那每一次有新版本的 Parallels Desktop 要发出的时候呢，大家会问的第一个问题就是说呢，那到底效能有没有改善？所以这边给大家看到我们效能的改善，有些效能呢是针对 Intel 的机型，有一些是针对 ARM 的机型，有些是在两种机型上面呢都有所提升的绩效。
I'll call your attention to the second bullet on this slide, the OpenGL performance improvement of 7-fold. I'll admit to you that when I got the email from the graphics engineering team at Parallels telling me this, I thought it was a typo, but it's not. They were actually able to get that kind of performance improvement in OpenGL apps, especially that are two-dimensional.
这边呢也特别请大家看一下第二行，因为这边提到的是 OpenGL 图形速度最高可以提升7倍。那这边也给大家分享一下，当初我从这个就是绘图团队那边收到 email 的时候呢，说提升7倍，我本来以为说是打错字了，应该不会有那么快，但确实也就是如此，有这么高的提升。那尤其是在2D 的图形上更是如此。
A performance improvement of 7 times can move an application from being too slow to be useful, or a game too slow to be playable to playable. And you'll see that in my demo.
那提升7倍意思就是说呢，如果是应用程式的话呢，本来跑得太慢了，根本没有办法使用，现在变得可以使用了。或者是如果是玩游戏的话呢，以前也是太慢了，没有办法玩游戏的，现在变得可以玩了。稍后的 demo 也会给大家看这一点。
Let me talk for a moment about macOS Monterey.
接下来我们来看一下 macOS Monterey。
Parallels Desktop 17 will fully support macOS Monterey, both on Intel and on M1. It'll be supported as a host and as a guest. Guest support for macOS in M1, this is an industry first. The first time this is available is Parallels Desktop 17.
好，那我们这边看到的是呢，Parallels Desktop 17呢，它可以支援Monterey 这一版本的作业系统，而且不管是在 Intel 的机器上，或者在 M1 的机型上面呢，都是如此，而且是作为 host 或作为 guest 都可以。那针对M1 Mac 这样子的支援呢，我们算是业界第一家，所以 Parallels Desktop 17在这个方面呢，就是业界第一家可以做到这样的支援。
So I will tell you that moving Parallels Desktop to run on the M1, especially with these performance improvements, took the vast bulk of the engineering time we had this year. In fact, we actually calculated that it took about 50 man-years of effort to move Parallels Desktop to the M1.
为了要让 Parallels Desktop 可以在这个 M1 上面呢来运作呢，以及同时提升这个效能呢，真的是投入了非常多我们工程人员的努力进去。那我们也计算过，其实我们今年大部分工程人员的时间都花在这一块了，那大概是总结需要50个人年的时间来完成这样子的转换，让Parallels Desktop 可以支援 M1。
But we still had time for some other features. Let me tell you about a couple of those.
不过在做了这么多的努力之后呢，我们还额外添加了一些功能，或者是效能的提升。下面就来介绍这些其他的效能提升。
We were able to implement a new display driver for Windows 10 and Windows 11 that gave a significant performance improvement, both for things like games, or also video playback, or actually any application that puts graphics on the screen, or just about any application.
我们先看到呢，就是显示器的驱动程式这一块哦，针对这个 Windows 10还有11呢，效能都提升了，所以不管是玩游戏，或者是播放一些影音，或者是任何需要使用到图形的应用程式，都可以提升效能。
And you will see the effects of this new display driver in my demo in a few moments.
之后在 demo 里面也会给大家示范一下这个显示器驱动程式的效能提升。
Let me talk now about a feature that's a little bit technical, but turns out to be very important. As you know, in Parallels Desktop, when you define a virtual machine, you have to specify the amount of RAM for that virtual machine and how many CPU cores to devote to that virtual machine.
接下来这一段呢，就是比较技术性一点，但是其实非常的重要。那在这个 Parallels Desktop 上面呢，我们要去做一个 VM 的时候呢，你要先去指定说，好，那我需要多少的 RAM， 我需要几核的这个 CPU， 通常以前是这样子。
This is fine the first time you do it on a virtual machine, but if you move that virtual machine to another Mac, it might not have the optimal settings, and that was an issue. In addition, if you were an IT manager and had to deploy virtual machines to dozens or hundreds of machines in your Macs in your enterprise, you have to go around and individually adjust each one to the amount of memory and the amount of CPU cores, and that was an issue.
第一次做这样子的 VM 设置呢，大概是没什么问题。可是如果要把它搬到一台这个 Mac 上面的话呢，可能它的设置呢就不是最理想的，那还要再做一些调整。特别是如果你是 IT 部门的这个经理的话呢，你一次要把这个 VM 呢部署到可能企业里面上百台的 Mac 上面，然后要针对这一台台的机器做个别的调整，去设置它的这个 RAM 还有 CPU 的这个核心数目呢，这是非常累人的。
So when we change this in Parallels Desktop 17, we automatically figure out the optimal settings for both RAM and CPU cores for a given virtual machine on a given Mac.
但是我们在 Parallels Desktop 17里面呢做了一些改变，所以让这样子呢最理想的设置呢可以由这个软体呢自动帮你来做规划，所以可以在你要去设一个 VM 的时候呢，它可以帮你去计算出来说好，那最理想的 RAM 应该是多少啊 ？CPU 的核心应该是几颗。
However, if you really wanted to set specifically the amount of RAM or the cores for a virtual machine, you can go into a custom mode and set those individually. The default, however, is this optimal setting for most users that we apply, and that's the default setting in Parallels Desktop 17.
但是当然，如果你想要手动的针对这个 VM 呢去设它的这个 RAM 以及核心的话呢，也可以使用这个客制模式来去做设置。不过这边我们可以看到呢，就是会有个预设的模式，预设值都已经帮你列出来了，那使用者可以直接套用。
Another feature, you're probably aware of coherence, which makes the Windows desktop disappear, and you just see Windows apps running side by side with Mac apps on the Mac screen.
那另外一个这个功能呢，就是 coherence， 意思就是说呢，你在这个 Mac 上面呢，会觉得说这个 Windows 其实就是这个 Mac 的一部分，这种融合模式。
The vast majority of Parallels Desktop users use coherence, and this works out great for them, except in a couple of cases. In the cases when Windows is installing, when Windows is updating, when you're logging in, Windows would take over the whole screen. And this was not optimal. You see it in the top screenshot in this slide.
好，那通常呢都会是刚刚提到的这样子的融合模式，只有少数几个例子。不好意思，线上的所有媒体朋友们呢，如果没有要发言的话呢，请记得先静音，谢谢大家，这样子比较不会有回声。好，那刚提到说有少数几个例子呢，coherence。
17。
So in Parallels Desktop
Sorry, Kurt,
17,
hold on a second.
we special case these situations, and we force Windows into a window, so it doesn't take over your whole screen, and we think this will be a much better user experience, and this is the default for coherence in 17.
线上的这个媒体朋友，不好意思，请大家静音。
The last feature I want to talk about is a feature. Last feature I want to talk about. Okay. Let's fix the sound.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Okay, sounds better now? Great. So, the last feature I want to talk about today for Parallels Desktop is one that's been requested by users for several years, and we were finally able to do it, and that's drag and drop of text and graphics between Windows and Mac apps. And I'll show you this in my demo.
好，那刚刚上一章就讲到说 coherence 这个模式呢，本来在少数的这个操作当中，比如说你去安装 Windows 或者是要这个登入的时候呢，你会发觉说这个 Windows 把整个荧幕都占据了，但是在 Parallels Desktop 17下面就不会这样子了。然后这边这一页提到的就是一个17里面的新功能，就是去拖放文字或者是图形。
So let me just mention one other thing we'll talk about today, and that is Parallels Toolbox. Parallels Toolbox, as you know, is bundled with Parallels Desktop, and it has a bunch of tools, single-purpose tools. We came out with a new release about 2 weeks ago, and I'll show you one of the new tools in that in my demo.
最后要提到的就是 Parallels 的工具项的这个 Toolbox， 这个是在2周前所释出的，在 demo 当中也会再跟大家介绍一下。
And now I will turn it over to my colleague Jenny, who's going to talk about pricing.
接下来我们把时间交给 Jenny， 会跟我们介绍一下这个版本的价格。
Thank you, Kurt. 那么大家呢，这一页跟大家解释的就是我们 Parallels Desktop 17的价格。那我们今年呢是首次用以台币的方式呈现。那么大家可能要特别注意的一点，是因为我们在官网上那个美金跟台币的汇率是浮动的，所以大家在这一页所看到的，有可能每天的那个价格会有点不太一样，但是都不会差太多。那么第一个呢，是我们 Parallels Desktop for Mac 的订阅版本，那每年呢是2390台币，那我们的永久授权呢是2990。那 Pro 跟 Business Edition 呢，都是在3000块左右，3390跟3272。那么升级版呢，从任何的旧版本升级到17，Parallels Desktop 17呢 for Mac 是1636。那从任何的旧版本呢升级到 Parallels Desktop Pro 的 Edition 呢是1636。那么再次强调呢，这个是我们在官网上的那个汇率是浮动的。所以这个会有时候会有一点变动，但是呢都不会差太多。Okay, thank you, Kurt. Back to you.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm going to stop PowerPoint and get ready to do a live demo. Before I do my demo, I want to tell you 2 things specifically. One is to calibrate you about the speed of Ring Central. Sending PowerPoint slides to your screens is one thing. But a live demo, full screen, from a Retina Mac, that's a lot of pixels.
好，那我现在要准备来做我的这个 demo 了。不过在那之前，我跟大家讲2件事情。第一件事情呢，就是Ring Central 现在用的这个视讯会议软体的这个速度方面，就是我用这个 Mac 来推我的这个简报到这个 Ring Central 里面呢是一回事了，但是如果要在上面呢做现场的 live demo 的话呢，那又是另外一回事了，因为会有非常多的像素。
So I'm going to open up a Macintosh window and minimize it with the famous Genie effect. And I'm going to guess that you aren't seeing that at the speed you would normally expect on a Macintosh. And that's just because it's a lot of information to get from my screen to your screen.
好，那大家可以看到，我把我的这个 Mac 的视窗打开了，然后把它缩小。各位可以看到这个速度哦，可能跟各位过去在其他这个 Mac 上面看的速度是不一样的。那这是因为从我的荧幕这边呢，要推非常多的资讯到你们那边，所以会有这样子的延迟。
And the last thing I want to tell you about is the hardware I'm running on. So I'm on a MacBook Pro, and I'm running a late developer beta of macOS Monterey. Most of my demo will be in Windows 11. I'm running an insider preview of Windows 11 in a virtual machine. And since I set up this demo machine a couple weeks ago, I'm actually using a late beta of Parallels Desktop 17 itself. So that means I have a beta on top of a beta on top of a beta. So at any moment, my screen can start smoking and burst into flames. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure you're all aware of the fear of a live demo.
好，那另外第二件事情就跟大家讲一下，我现在使用的这个 demo 的硬体。那我用的是一台这个 MacBook Pro， 然后呢，我在上面有这个装虚拟机，那就是我们的这个 Windows 11。那我用的是这个 Insider Preview 的 program， 这个先前跟大家讲过了。那几个礼拜之前呢，我就开始使用这个 Parallels Desktop 17了。那个时候呢，也是还没有正式释出的一个版本，所以各位可以想象一下，我现在等于是在一个 beta 版上面的东西去运行另外一个 beta 版的东西，然后再在后面还会有另外一个 beta 版的东西。所以任何时候大家如果看到镜头前面开始冒烟啦，或者有什么火花的话呢，那请大家不要太惊讶。那这个就是做现场 demo 的时候呢，我们都会有点怕的原因在这里。
So after all my talk about performance improvements in Parallels Desktop 17, I think I should start my demo with 2 speed demos.
刚刚讲了 Parallels Desktop 17有很多效能上的提升，所以一开始呢，我先用2个与速度有关的 demo 给大家看一下速度这方面。
If you look at my dock, you can see that the Finder is running, and Ring Central is running, which is our webinar software, but nothing else.
大家可以看到，下面是我的 Dock。那目前有在运作的程式呢，一个就是 Finder， 然后另外一个就是我们现在用的这个会议视讯软体 Ring Central， 然后其他都没有在运作。
In particular, Parallels Desktop is not running, Windows is not running, and no Windows apps are running.
所以呢 ，Parallels Desktop 呢，以及 Windows 以及这个一些其他的应用程式呢，目前都还没有开启。
So I'm going to click on this Microsoft Access icon here in the dock, and when I do so, Parallels Desktop will launch, Windows 11 will boot, and then Access will be launched.
好，那我现在点下这个 Microsoft Access 之后呢，这个 PD 呢，它就会开起来了，然后 Windows 也开起来了，我们就可以来用这个软体。
So I'm going to click Now.
点选下去。
So that takes about 3.5 seconds to launch, and we're real pleased about that launch speed.
好，那大概这整个开起来时间是3.5秒吧，所以我们对于这个速度还蛮满意的。
However, users only launch applications once in a while. They run applications for a long time. So what about the speed of running applications? So I have a demo for that for you too.
那刚刚讲到的是说，我们要开一个新的软体嘛。那如果是要让一个软体呢持续的去运作的话，那又是什么样的状况呢？我们来看一下。
So I've launched the Edge browser and gone to a site that helps developers see about graphic speed, frames per second, vertical synchronization, things like this.
好，那我现在用的是这个 Edge 这个浏览器，然后我给大家看到这个画面呢，它是特别让一些开发者，我们可以看到说这个图形处理的速率，就是你会看到每秒的这个帧率，然后还有垂直的同步化等等一些数字。
And as you can see here, I'm getting between 59 and 60 frames per second, which is the maximum for an Apple display.
位在左上角可以看到，大概每秒有59帧或者是有60帧哦，就是这个 frame， 这个大概就是在 MacBook 上面的最极致的一个帧率了。
So I ran this demo on Parallels Desktop 16.5 earlier this week, and I got a frame rate of 37 frames per second. So that's a big increase in Parallels Desktop 17.
我这个礼拜稍早呢，我也有用同样的测试，但是我使用的是这个 Parallels Desktop 16.5版，然后那个时候的帧率呢是37，所以 Parallels Desktop 17的改善真的是非常大的提升。
This speed improvement is primarily due to the new display driver, as well as improvements in metal, and we worked very closely with Apple to make sure the performance would be optimal.
速度之所以可以提升呢，就是因为有这个图形的驱动器的缘故，然后再加上 Metal 的这个使用。那 Metal 这一块呢，我们当然也是跟苹果有非常密切的合作，所以有这么好的效果。
So I also told you that both 32-bit and 64-bit applications designed for Intel can run on the M1 under Parallels SF17. So let me show you one.
刚刚跟大家讲过说了，就是 Intel 的一些应用就是以 Intel 为架构的一些应用程式，不管是32位元或64位元的话呢，现在在PT17的支援之下呢，也可以在 M1 上面来运作。我们来看一下 demo。
So I will launch CorelDRAW 2021, which is a 64-bit application, and you can see the launch speed, and you can also see the performance of the app when it's running.
我们现在呢看的是一个64位元的应用程式，就是 Corel 2021版，可以看到开启还有它运作的速度。
So we're real pleased with the performance here, and so is the CorelDRAW team.
对于这个样子的效能表现，我们是蛮满意的。那 Corel 那边的团队也很开心看到这样的结果。
The next thing I'll show you is a new drag and drop feature in Parallels Desktop 17. This has been a user request for several years.
接下来我们来看 PT17下面的另外一个功能呢，就是拖曳这样子的功能。这个也是多年来使用者一直敲碗想要的功能。
So I've launched Word for Windows, and now I'm going to launch TextEdit.
我先把这个 Windows 的 Word 开起来，然后呢，另外再开这个 TextEdit。
So I have a Windows app and I have a Mac app.
所以一边有 Windows 的应用程式，然后一边是 Mac 的应用程式。
I will select some text in WinWord and drag it over to TextEdit, like that.
在左边的 Word 呢，我就选了一些字起来，然后把它拖到右边 Mac 的应用程式里面，然后就拖过去了。
I will open up some space in the Word document and then drag a graphic from TextEdit into Word.
好，左边我刚刚多增加了一些空白啊，所以我就可以把右边这个 Mac 应用程式里面这个图形呢拖到左边 Word 里面。
So as long as an application follows all the rules on its platform for drag and drop, whether you're on a Mac and the Apple rules, or you're in Windows and you need Microsoft rules, if those are all followed, this will work for the apps. Mac apps and Windows apps in both directions that I just showed.
所以各位可以看到，在 Mac 下面呢，或者在 Windows 下面的一些拖曳啊、拖拉的这个功能呢，现在在这个它们之间呢，在 Windows 以及在 Mac 之间呢，都可以像这样子如常的使用。
So next I want to show you performance in a game.
接下来给大家看一下游戏的效能。
Remember I mentioned that OpenGL, and especially OpenGL for two-dimensional applications, got the biggest performance boost. So I went on Steam, and I found a game that satisfied both those criteria.
我刚刚说过呢，这个 OpenGL 的效能呢有很大的改善呢，特别是针对2D 的图形呢，这个效能改善是最大的，所以我就在 Steam 上面呢找了一个游戏符合这两个要求。
So the game is called Ori and the Blind Forest, and I'll launch it now.
这个游戏叫做 Ori and Blind Forest。我现在把这个游戏打开。
So in this game, you control this little character with the keyboard or the mouse.
这个游戏里面呢，我就用滑鼠或是键盘来控制这个主角。
And you run into obstacles like this.
会遇到一些像这样的障碍物。
So as you can see, Parallels Desktop 17 makes this game run acceptably well. However, it doesn't improve your game playing skills, because I just died. So I need to spend more time in the game to get better at it, but at least I had that option now that it runs so well in Parallels Desktop 17.
所以 PD17呢，下面我们可以看到这个游戏运作的非常好，但运作非常好不代表说我打游戏的技巧就比较好，因为刚刚人就死掉了，所以但起码我知道这个画面会是很好的。
So next I want to show you a macOS virtual machine running on the M1.
好，接下来我们来看一
So
下
the only possible,
在
please go ahead.
M1 上面呢来跑一个 VM。
Here I have loaded all the supported virtual machines in Parallels Desktop 17 for the M1. And that includes Windows 10 and Windows 11, a bunch of Linux distributions, and macOS Monterey.
好，这边我把所有这个 PD17的支援的 VM 呢，全部都载入进来了，里面就包含了 Windows 10、Windows 11、Linux 的几个不一样的版本，以及 macOS 的 Monterey。
So you'll see the macOS Monterey is not finished yet, either from Apple or from Parallels. So there are certain things that don't work. Drag and drop doesn't work. You don't see additions up here, the Parallels tools, but many things do work. I'll launch Maps, for example.
好，那
And now we're in Seattle.
这
And
个
now let's go to New York.
好，刚刚提到说，这个 Monterey 呢，不管是 Apple 那边或者是我们 Parallels 这边呢，都还没有完全的完成，所以有一些功能呢，像是拖拉这个功能啊，或者是我们通常会看到右上角这个工具呢是没有的，但是有一些部分呢是可以运作的很好，像我现在打开的就是一个地图的应用。
So when Monterey is finished by Apple and released to the public, our work for Parallels tools will be finished, and all those features you're accustomed to seeing in a virtual machine will work in Monterey on the M1. And this is a first. No other company can do this today.
所以到时候呢 ，Monterey 呢正式的发行之后呢，各位就可以看到说，我们针对它的这个功能也都可以使用了，然后呢，一些 VM 的一些功能也都可以使用了。那这个在 M1 上面呢去做这样子的这个运作呢，我们就是业界的第一家。
So the last thing I want to show you before I open it up for Q&A is to show you one of the new tools in Parallels Toolbox. This new tool is pretty cool. It has the feature that allows you to extract text from an image.
在就位之前呢，再给大家介绍最后一个工具哦。这个工具蛮酷的，它就是可以在图形里面呢，帮你把这个文字给截取出来。
So here I have a screenshot I took. I want to get this text out because I want to edit it, put it someplace else. So all I have to do to get that is the following.
好，那现在我刚刚打开一个荧幕截图嘛，那我想要把截图里面的字给拿出来变成字的话呢，我要做的就是以下这个顺序。
I just open up the Recognize Text tool and drag the image to the tool. Tell it what language it is, and it will extract the text and have that text available for you for editing.
我就 够把 recognize text 这个工具给打开，然后把刚刚那个截图呢给拖进来，同时选择呢我要它认定为是哪一种语言，然后大家刚刚看到就转换成文字了，图形里面的字就转换成可以编辑的文字了。
Well, you might have noticed that we have a number of languages supported in this Recognize Text tool. So I went to a government website here in Seattle where they have health advisories in various languages, and I grabbed one for Chinese. So I'll take that now, open up the tool, drag that image into the tool, tell it what language it is, and then extract the text. There you go.
那因为它支援多种语言嘛，所以我就去我们这个西雅图政府的官方网站呢，针对那个健康、公共卫生有一些不同语言的说明，我就刚刚就截了一段中文的，但是是用截图的方式，然后把它丢到这个小工具里面看，然后再选择中文，各位可以看到它就辨识出来的这些文字。
So those are the things I wanted to show you. I would like to then open it up to Q&A. I'll do my best to answer your questions, and we'll go from there. And I'll let Aaron decide when we stop.
好，那以上就是我的简报了。接下来我们可以进入 Q&A 的环节。那我们可以 Q&A 到什么时候呢？我想这个 Aaron 也会再提醒我们。谢谢。
Thank you, Chris. I think almost reporters here are very happy to meet you year by year. So we say hello to Kurt, okay?
Hi. Sorry I can't be there.
Yeah. Can you see everyone? Yeah. Okay. Do you have I think
First question?
Yeah. Wait a moment.
我有个问题，就是目前看起来是只有标准版支援那个 virtual 的 TPM 吗？如果是的话，那未来会开放标准版也会支援 virtual 的 TPM 来安装 Win11 吗？
你第一句是说只有什么版？
标准版
standard
version。
只有标准版支援 TPM， 然后你未来怎么样？不好意思。
就是如果是的话，那未来会开放标准版也能够来支援 TPM 吗
？TPM。
对。
So just wondering if currently only standard version supports virtual machine TPM. Is that the case, or if it's not, will in the future, like the standard version or more versions will start to support TPM as well?
I didn't catch that. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, currently I think only the standard version supports VMT. Not.
Oh,
Standard version
now.
doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't.
So
the standard version doesn't support TPM now.
So let me try to answer that question.
Yeah.
You are correct that Microsoft has announced that Windows 11 needs a TPM chip to run. And in Parallels Desktop, we've had a TPM chip support virtual TPM for some time now, but only in the Pro and Business Edition. Because of this movement by Microsoft, we've decided to bring TPM support to all editions of Parallels Desktop, Standard, Pro, and Business. So Parallels Desktop 17 will support Windows 11 TPM when it's needed. And that's part one of my answer. I'll just translate that.
确实，微软这边呢提到说呢，就是这个 Windows 11呢是需要这个 TPM 的晶片。那这个 Parallels Desktop 呢有这样子可以支援虚拟 TPM 的晶片的这样子的做法，但是呢以前是只有在 Pro 跟 Business 的版本，就是企业版。但是因为现在这个 Microsoft 的这个做法的这个转换呢，我们也希望能够去用我们所有的版本都可以去支援，所以就是标准版啊，然后专业版以及企业版呢都可以去支援TPM， 就是 Win11里面的 TPM。好，这是我一部分的回复。OK。
Okay, so here's what happened for me personally. So I knew about this restriction, so I enabled TPM in Parallels Desktop, and then I installed Windows 11. Worked just fine the very first time.
好，所以我个人呢，就我知道这件事情之后呢，我也在这个 Parallels Desktop 里面呢去启用了这个 TPM， 然后我去安装 Win11。
But then Microsoft made two announcements. The first announcement was they wanted the maximum number of people to try out the Insider Preview, so they disabled the TPM check in Windows 11 for now. And that's the first announcement.
那后来呢，这个微软又做了2个宣布。第一个宣布呢，就是说呢，因为看到说去加入这个Windows Preview Program 的这个人数呢，可能是有一个上限的，所以呢，他们有把这个当中呢，你可以去选 TPM 的那个格子呢，他先把这个功能给关掉了。
The second announcement by Microsoft was that, well, they're disabling the TPM check for now. They're going to put it back when Windows 11 finally is released. So we decided to put TPM support in all editions of Parallels Desktop 17, and it'll be there when you need it.
那他们第2个宣布就是说呢，虽然现在这 TPM 的功能先关掉了，但是当这个 Win11呢正式发行的时候呢，这个功能又回来了。所以呢，我们现在决定就是说，我们所有的版本都会支援这个 TPM， 让大家需要的时候就可以使用。
So I hope this answers your question.
好，希望回答到你的问题。
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
还有其他问题吗？
Hi. May I ask a question for online?
Sure.
Hi, Kurt. It's always nice to see you in every summer.
Thank you so much. Sorry I'm not there in person.
Yeah, I hope so. Here's a question. You use universal binary in Parallels, and that will support Intel and Silicon, right? But my question is, when you integrate the two versions together, the application will be a little bit heavier. So, is it possible that you will release a separate version of Silicon and Intel?
You are certainly correct. When you have the code resources for both Intel and M1, the application is a little bit bigger, but it's not that much bigger. It's the dialogues and the icons and so on that take up lots of space. So those are only one copy. So yes, we could break it apart, but it would make things confusing for many people, we think. So it's not worth it for most people. And especially not worth it for an IT admin who has to deploy their Parallels Desktop on like 100 machines and have to go around and touch every one of them to a different version or something. That'd be crazy. So we decided to say it doesn't matter. I mean, when you get a release of Monterey from Apple, it's 13 gigabytes. Okay, we're like tiny compared to that.
好，那刚
I hope
刚
that answered the question.
刚刚这边提到一个问题，就是说呢，现在用这个通用的这个2进位嘛，可以支援这个 Intel， 然后也可以支援这个M1， 那是不是有考虑过？因为同时都要支援的话呢，那原来这个 PD 的这个应用它的大小就会变得比较大，所以有没有考虑说呢，要去发行另外一个个别的这个分开的这个版本？那这边的回复是说，确实要同时支援的话呢，这个应用它就是会比较大，没有错，但是也没有到太大，主要就是一些比如说图示啦，或者一些这个对话框啊，那当然要把它做成另外一个版本的话也可以，但是有可能对使用者来说会有一些混淆，所以我们就觉得说呢，不太值得特别为了这件事情呢去开发或者是推出另外一个版本，尤其是如果是比如说 IT 部门人员的话呢，他今天有数百台的机器要去部署，那他要去针对每一台机器就做这样子的调整的话呢，是非常的麻烦，而且到时候这个 Mac OS 的 Monterey 推出的时候呢，它的大小会是13G， 所以比起来我们的大小真的是很小很小。
So I have one more data point. So when I last checked, the Parallels Desktop 17 DMG was about 400 megs. So in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing in terms of size.
好，那最后再给大家提供一个数字哦，我去查了一下，就是 PD17它的 DNG 档案大小呢是400M，所以如果跟那个 macOS 的大小比起来，我们真的是很小。
I hope that answers your question.
好，希望回答到你的问题。
Yes, thank you.
Next question.
好，请问还有问题吗？
媒体朋友还有没有其他？
我想再追问一个问题，就是现在目前微软也推出像 Cloud PC 这样的一种订阅的模式。那在未来长期来看的话 ，Parallels 它会认为这样一个模式对它也会是一个威胁吗？或者说有其他的看法？
So a follow-up question on the offer of Cloud PC from Microsoft. Now they offer the subscription model or the mode for their Cloud PC. So what's Parallels' take on this? Do you think this kind of subscription mode is a threat to you, or do you have a different take on their new offer?
So we just found out about Windows 365 a couple of days ago. When it was first available, our engineers downloaded it, or installed it, and began playing with it. And we're looking forward to examining it on the Mac and seeing, but right now, it's just too early for me to make any judgments. Sorry, I don't have much to say about it yet, it's just too new.
好，那我们是之前也才听到这个新的消息哦，知道有 Windows 365这样子的这个做法，所以我们的工程师呢立刻就去下载来了，然后来用看看。那我们是非常期待进一步的再去观察一下它在这个 Apple 上面的使用，所以现在要去下任何评断的话呢，可能还为时过早。
The only thing I can add is that in normal times, I spend a lot of time on an airplane, and you can't use an internet-based application support on an airplane, whereas I use my Mac and I use Parallels desktop all the time on planes.
而且还有另外一件事情啊，就是通常如果你是在坐飞机的话，像我自己以前常常这个飞来飞去嘛，在飞机上你就没有办法使用这种需要网络的应用程式。所以如果是像我的话呢，比如说一切都要走云端的话呢，那我在这个飞机上面，然后我要用我的 Mac 在上面用这个，比如说 Parallels Desktop 的话，那你就没有办法。
I hope that answers your question. Best I can do.
好，希望这有回答到你的问题，这是我目前能够提供的最理想的答案。
All right.
我来询问一个问题。刚刚提到说我们可以跑 ARMS 的 APP 跟一般的这个x86的 APP 嘛？那驱动程式呢？驱动程式是不是一定要 ARM 版本的驱动程式才能够驱动这个装置呢？
Hi, I have a question on drivers. So earlier you talked about the possibility of being able to run both ARM applications and x86 applications. How about driver? Do we need an ARM-based driver in order to run the applications?
The basic answer is yes. Some USB devices, for example, need a driver in the OS, and some of them don't yet have ARM-based drivers. I had this happen to me about 3 weeks ago or so. So I know how frustrating it can be when you have a piece of equipment and you can't get it to work. The manufacturers of these devices will rev their drivers soon, I believe, and make them available.
好，这个答案是对的，没有错。就是我们可以看到有些应用程式呢，它的这个驱动程式呢，它是没有 ARM 版本的这个驱动程式。所以在3个礼拜前呢，我也遇到有人跟我提过这个问题。那我也知道说，如果大家手边有一个装置，然后没有办法运作的话呢，应该都会觉得蛮挫折的。但是我也相信呢，制造商呢，他们应该很快就会释出这些不同版本的 driver， 让大家都可以使用。
Thank you.
Next question.
不好意思，我想请问一下哦，因为未来 Mac 的 N1，OK 已经用 ARM 的那个 CPU 了吧？那我们知道新的 iPad Pro 也是用 N1 嘛？那 PD 未来会不会有 N1，然后跑 Windows 的版本？
On iPad。
对，在 iPad 上面。
My question is, well, we know that M1 is using like ARM CPU, and Parallels desktop now can run on M1 as well, and we wonder whether it will one day also run on iPad. Is iPad now also using ARM CPU?
So you are correct that some of the iPad devices now use the M1 chip.
Yeah.
But the chip is not the only thing you need. So the macOS has certain subsystems that we rely on for Parallels Desktop, and those subsystems aren't available on the iPad. So right now, there's just no way we can even begin such a piece of work or even plan for it. So that would make be a big change to Apple to bring, for example, a hypervisor to the iPad. I don't know if they have any plans to do that. We'll certainly talk to them if they do. But right now, no, we have no plans for this because it's not possible technically.
没有错，有些 iPad 呢，它是使用这个 M1 的晶片没有错，但是这个晶片也不是我们唯一需要的，我们还需要一些，比如说一些 subsystem， 一些子系统在这个 iPad 上面，但是这些 iPad 上面呢是没有的，所以目前呢还没有办法在 iPad 上面做使用。那如果要能够在 iPad 上面做使用的话呢 ，Apple 本身呢也要做一个非常大的改变才行，比如说它要能够让这个 hypervisor 也可以在 iPad 上面运作。那就我们所知呢，目前好像还没有，所以就你看，我们目前还没有办法，这个就是套用到 iPad 上面来使用。Hi, Kurt. I think there's a Chinese question in the chat. Just give me a second.
Okay.
So a follow-up question on Intel and Apple Silicon. So in the future, when one day Apple Silicon processors fully replace all Intel processors, will the future versions of Parallels Desktop plan to just be built upon ARM, or will it stay as what it is right now, which is to support ARM and x86 at the same time? So ARM-based only, or supporting both ARM and x86 in the future?
I understand the question. Today, the vast majority of our customers are running on Intel Macs. But more and more are buying M1 Macs. So for the foreseeable future, Parallels Desktop will support both. We have no plans to cut off support for Intel Macs anytime soon.
目前就是有绝大多数的这个 Mac 使用者呢，还是使用这个 Intel Mac。那也有一些使用者呢，有越来越多使用者呢开始买这个M1。那也因此未来呢，就是在可预见的未来之内呢，我们 Parallels Desktop 呢会同时支援 Intel 的 Mac， 还有这个 M1 的 Mac。目前还没有计划说不支援 Intel 的 Mac。
I hope this answers your question.
好，希望有回答到你的问题。
I'm sorry, here's another question for you.
Please.
I remember last year I just asked you a question about kernel extension, and you said you are still using the kernel extension. So I'm wondering if you will just convert to system extension for the 17 version.
So in Parallels Desktop 17, there's a switch. You can use the Parallels hypervisor text, or you can use the Apple hypervisor text. We suggest most people are going to want to use the Apple one, and in fact, if you don't, you get some little nagging alerts from the Mac. You know, you really shouldn't do that. Yada. It does work, but they're suggesting you not to do it in the future. So we basically cut over to the Apple hypervisor text, and in general, Apple doesn't want to have third-party text in the macOS anymore. They're discouraging this as much as they can without really being mean about it. Hope that answers your question. So you can use either one, but the time will probably come only Apple hypervisor text will be supported.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
好，这边有提到说，这个去年就有问到说关于这个 kernel extension 的使用啊，关于这个 cast。这边回复是说呢，这个 PT17里面呢，它其实就是可以做切换的。你可以去切换说，我今天要用 PT 的 hypervisor cast， 还是说我要用这个 Apple 的 hypervisor cast？ 那当然，你的这个 Mac 呢就会建议你要使用这个Apple 的这个 cast。如果你没有使用的话呢，可能就会跳出一些字说，你没有用这个 Apple 的话呢，这样子不太好啊，就是会出现一些这个有点讨厌的这种对话框。那这个主要也是因为这个 Apple 他们不希望说有第三方的这个 cast 来使用啊，所以他们其实就是不鼓励大家使用这个第三方的 cast。
Aaron, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, okay. There's a question here.
Hello, Kurt. 我想请问一下一个问题，就是这2年好像对于那个 Parallels 这个远端遥控的 APP 好像琢磨并不多，那升级的幅度也并不是很多，比较没有提到这件事情。那刚刚讲到说，因为我本身的习惯是比较喜欢用把电脑放在家里面，然后我是用这个 iPad 来远端遥控 Mac， 然后再打开 Parallels 的这样的方式。那在 Mac 上面呢，有这个跟 PC 上面中间有一个这个共用的资料夹，有没有可能在 AKS 上面也做一个资料夹？就是我把它丢到 Mac 上面去之后呢，然后我的 iPad 就自动下载这个东西，有点像自动同步的功能。
And this question is on the Parallels Access application, which seems not to be a focus from the Parallels perspective in the past 2 years, and there isn't much upgrades going on for Access either. And I myself, however, like to remotely control my computer, which is at home. So I would like to use my iPad, say, to launch the Parallels desktop on my Mac computer. So there could be some folders shared between Mac and PC. And so I wonder with Access or with some, maybe performance improvements, is it possible for a folder in Mac to be, say, automatically downloaded by my iPad, like some kind of synchronization?
So, Parallels Access remains a Parallels product. It's bundled with Parallels Desktop. It gets revised every once in a while. I did a blog post about adding the most user-requested feature to Parallels Access a few months ago, and it still is under development. It still works. The idea of downloading a VM into your iPad, that's kind of related to that question about can you have Parallels Desktop on the iPad? And right now, there's no way to do this, no technical way to do it, because the iPad OS doesn't have certain subsystems. Did I understand your question correctly?
好，那Access 呢，就目前当然还是我们 Parallels 的这个产品之一，它也是 Parallels Desktop 的一部分，然后时不时的会有一些这个修改的版本。那其实我几个月前呢，在我的这个就是在我们这个部落格上面，我有 po 一篇文章，就是给使用者解释一下说有哪一些这个功能可以来做使用。所以这个产品呢是有继续的在开发中。那如果是讲到说这个 VM 有没有办法载入到 iPad 的话，那当然问题就要回到说在 iPad 上面有没有办法跑 Parallels Desktop？ 那目前是没有办法嘛，因为这个 iPad OS 呢没有一些需要的 subsystem 在上面。不晓得我这样子有没有懂你的问题啊？
不太一样。
那你要在
像 Dropbox 它是一个 App， 它是本身是可以就是同步，例如说我在电脑上直接同步了。那虚拟器是在 Mac 上面是他们 Mac 跟 PC 是共用的情况下面，就是它有一个共用资料夹。那是不是这个东西直接我如果临时要抓什么资料，我就直接在 Mac 上面直接丢这个资料到那个跟例如说 AKS 共用的资料夹，类似这样概念，就是一个云端的一个储存的概念这样子。
然后你就丢到一个跟 AKS 共用资料夹，然后从 iPad 里面去
取用，这样是同步的概念而已。
So this question is basically on the synchronization of folders because say if we are thinking about Dropbox, it's an application which allows you to have your folders synchronized on different devices. But for Parallels Desktop, Windows and Mac OS are running on the same machine and they may share some folders. So I think the question is on whether or not it's possible maybe to put something into the access folder. And then from an iPad remotely, it still allows whatever is in the folder to be accessed.
I believe this is possible now, but I haven't tried it in quite a while. So I would request that you send, through Aaron or somebody, an email on this topic to me. I will research it and I will answer your question. I think it's possible, but I don't want to promise it until I try it myself.
我觉得应该是可以，但是我自己没有试过，所以我想要自己先试一遍，验证过之后呢，再告诉你答案。所以可能麻烦你可以透过 Aaron 这边呢，可能转一封 email 给我，我去研究一下，我自己去试过一遍之后，然后再告诉你答案。
我再补充一个，就是其实对我来讲，其实如果我把 Mac 放在家里面，对我来讲，我用 iPad 的使用环境下面 ，Mac 就是我的云作业系统。所以呢，云作业系统其实可以做非常多的东西。那我本身是 iPad 的作业系统，但是我可以远端遥控 Mac 跟甚至 PC 甚至未来的作业系统这样子。所以我觉得这个发展是很丰富，可以做很多变化。
Just to add some more comment, because for me, I put my Mac at home. So for me. I treat it as a cloud system, which is at home, and I use my iPad remotely to access my Mac. Of course, iPad has its own OS. So I think if it's possible to access the computer at home, which is my cloud system, it could be a Mac, it could be a PC. I think the possibilities are enormous. There will be such great use cases in the future. So this is just a comment.
I agree with you. I see a lot of promise in Parallels access, and I'll be frank with you. Over the last year and a half or so, because of the pandemic, more people working at home, wanted to get to their office computers and so on. We saw a great increase in the amount of use of Parallels access, and we were very pleased about this.
我同意您
You're not
的。
the only one who wants to do these sorts of things.
对，我同意你的看法。这个 Parallels Access 其实是非常有用的，尤其是过去1年半由疫情的关系呢，大家都没有办法到办公室去用我们的电脑，所以使用 Access 的机会就大增了。那大家也蛮满意的，所以我想您也不是唯一一位想要这么做的人，有很多人都有这样的需求。
OK， 不知道各位媒体朋友对今天的内容的发表还有没有什么最后一个问题？没有的话，我们就要谢谢 Kurt。Hi Kurt, thank you so much for your presentation. Yeah, we are so
Happy to do
enjoying
so.
it.
I recognize several of the faces in the group, even with the masks on. I'm sorry I'm not there in person.
谢谢大家莅临。那有几位这个老朋友的面孔我也都认得出来了。那很遗憾就是没有办法亲自到场，但是很开心看到大家。
Jenny， 你我们这边没有进一步的问题，所以OK，Hi Kurt。
好，那谢谢大家今天的参与哦。那因为疫情的关系，本来想说今年大家可能可以聚在一起，但是突然台湾又变得很严重，所以就没办法了。那现在又比较好了。那疫情还是影响着全球哦，所以大家还是多多保重。那我们还是希望呢，明年呢，期待明年可以跟大家见面。So thank you, Kurt, for the presentation today. It was very good, the speed was good, the presentation is very smooth. Thank you very much, and we hope that we all can see each other in face next year. So everybody stay safe, and thank you for all your support.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Aaron. Everyone else, thank you very much.